Hi folks, today's video is brought to you by Hero Forge, and I'll be showing you how to paint up this half-demon miniature. So I started off with a primed mini. The miniature I got was the high quality, and then I just used a spray primer to go over and give it a nice even layer. Now I'm going in with Horror Pink. I wanted to do kind of a light pink albino looking half demon, so I started out with this nice light pink color to do kind of the undertone for the skin, and I'm just going through and getting all of the skin, so the face, neck, ears. I'll also do the hands. That's really all the skin that's visible on this mini. And then I'll go over and kind of add some lighter layers on top so that you can see all the skin is painted. Now I'm going through and I'm dry brushing with Light Flesh from Model Color. This is just a very light, very pale, slightly pinkish flesh tone. And I like dry brushing lighter colors over darker colors for skin. I find it kind of gives that translucent effect that skin kind of has, where, you know, you can kind of see that the insides or whatnot. So I'm just going through and dry brushing. Also, it helps kind of just bring out more of the features of the mini. You especially see this now that I'm getting to the chest and face. And if you're not familiar with dry brushing, you just get a little bit of paint on a stiff dry brush, and then you wipe most of it off, so that's where dry brushing comes from. And then you very quickly move it back and forth over the mini. So what it does is it brings out those higher points. And yeah, you can see a little bit more detail in the face. So now that that's fully dry, you definitely want to let that really dry. I'm going to go in with Carroburg Crimson. So this is a nice like saturated red shade, just to help bring back in some of those darker bits. So I'm bringing that along the chest, into some of the hand, and I also brought it into like the ears and mouth, just helping bring those sculpt bits out. Because this mini is so expressive, you know, you can do such fun things with the expressions. I love making sure you can see the face. All right, I decided to add a little bit of this pink horror to the tips of the horns, just adding a little bit of a different color, and then I'm gonna layer up a brown over top of it. Now, one thing I love about the horns on this Hero Forge mini, now I'm going in with Thousand Sun Blue on the shirt, is they have so many options of horns, as well as the fact that you can go in and adjust the horns where exactly they sit on the head. So these ones I brought a little bit further forward, and then I also moved them down a little bit because of this awesome braid to really let that kind of not overlap. So if you ever find you've got something that doesn't line up quite right, hop over into the advanced posing tools, and you can make some fine adjustments, move things around, you know, change a hand placement, change how the hair falls, and really get your mini to be truly one of a kind and just absolutely perfect, exactly how you imagined it. So I'm going to paint through all of the rest of the shirt with that blue, the sleeves, and all of that, as well as the trim of the boot. And that's all painted up. I like to bring some of the color in from the top into the bottom and vice versa, just to help balance it. Now I'm going over the horns with Wyldwood in Citadel Contrast. So using a contrast, you could also, if you don't have contrast paint, you know, really water down something or go over a shade, an ink a couple of times to get a similar effect, where you kind of see that main color is the brown, but the tips are a little pinky. All right, so now I'm very carefully going and painting in the eyes. When you're painting eyes, you want to definitely use a very fine brush. Make sure that you've got watered down paint so that it will flow off of your brush very easily. And then I like to dab off as much paint as I possibly can from the brush, so I have only a little bit, and very carefully paint it. You also see I'm moving the mini around quite a lot just so that I can get the right angle to get that brush in there and get that super fine detail bit. Now I'm going back in with some Fenrisian Grey. This is a nice light kind of gray, very blue gray. I got a little bit on the horn there. Sometimes I can just wipe it off and not have to go back over. But I'm using this to bring out the layer for the blue shirt. I like that it kind of brings it a little bit more into a pastel so it doesn't quite stand out as much from the skin, but I did want to do a blue to help contrast with the pink in the skin tone. So, that's something to keep in mind of balancing your warms and cools and also picking those contrasting colors to kind of make them pop. And I figured, this guy I painted him up as maybe a mage, maybe an artificer. He's got some animal buddies there, so perhaps some kind of druid. Figured, yeah, he could have a bright colored shirt, not trying to blend in. So I decided to do this kind of as a leather vest that he's wearing. So I'm using Doombull Brown and using this very kind of nice reddy orangish brown for that leather. It gives it kind of that leather look as well as it ties in with the red in the skin tone and is similar but different than the brown used for the horns. So keeping in mind kind of keeping similar colors. Now I'm going back in with Skrag Brown just to add some layer to bring a little bit more dimension to that leather. This is just a lighter shade essentially of the leather. And I'm going to do that all over, including on the boots as well as on this vest bit that I'm painting right now. Alright, so now that that's dry, I also went ahead and painted the trim in that Skrag Brown. Now to add back in some shadows, I'm going in with Agrax Earthshade and just placing this shade into where I want a little bit more shadow into some of those folds in the fabric. I love the folds in these boots, kind of really bring dimension. It really does feel like, the foot's bending. That's how a worn boot would look. Now I'm going back in with Golgfang Brown, hitting that trim, just bringing it up a little bit more, a little bit lighter. Not doing the whole thing, but just kind of hitting a few of the key points. Just again, bringing a little bit more dimension into this mini in small places where I can. And I am doing this mini kind of more piecemeal, bit by bit. Sometimes I find it's easier to block in all of the main colors, and sometimes I like to just, paint all of the shirt. Alright, so now I'm moving on to this adorable badger, and I'm painting this on in almost a dry brush technique. I'm being a little bit heavy-handed. There's a lot more paint on my brush than I usually would use for a dry brush, but I've brushed a bit of it off and just kind of brushing it back, brushing this on and getting this very streaky look. I'm very purposely getting a streaky look because, badgers are furry, so this gives that effect of fur, and especially looking at some reference photos, their body tends to be that gray, and then they've got the white and black face. Okay, so I decided instead of doing realistic flame, I wanted to have kind of a magical looking flame. So playing around with a little color theory, I'm painting the flame yellow, and stay with me here, it's going to be a blue-green flame because I'm going to layer over it with contrast in a very saturated blue. You could do a similar effect using any kind of ink and all that. So now I'm letting that yellow fully dry, and while that's drying, I'm painting the apron in Apothecary White. And this isn't the only layer I'll do on the apron, but I wanted to kind of base it in, see what I thought, and I decided, it was a little too white. It kind of, especially because where it sits on the mini, felt like it kind of cut the mini in half, and all of that. But I also decided to take it up onto the braids, and again, this is not the only layer that I'm going to do on the braids. I've definitely been playing around a lot more with layering inks and contrast over colors, and then also painting things over it. Those are some easy ways to get some cool effects. Alright, so now we're going into this magical paint. So yeah, you see, as I'm painting this blue on, it is blue, I promise you it's blue. It's turning that yellow into a green, but because the contrast likes to really settle into nooks and crannies, you get a similar effect with inks, but you might have to do a couple more layers. It's giving this really cool effect of being green into a blue, which is, you know, not your typical flame. So that seemed like a fun, ooh, it's a magic flame. Now I'm going through with Carroburg Crimson, and I'm painting in the hair. So again, I wanted to bring some cohesion between the skin tone and the hair, so I'm using the same shade that I used on the skin, but giving it that kind of light pink effect. Alright, so now I'm going back over the apron with Agrax Earthshade, and you'll see that I also went ahead and painted the cool little, like, the bag and the rag and the book that were hanging off of the sides of this belt, those fun little side items that you can add on, because, you know, there are so many options. Alright, and now it's time for the badger. So I'm just using this white to paint in the pattern. And I did pull up reference photos of English badgers, because that's kind of what this guy looked the most like. And that definitely helped. It gave me a much better idea of what the face pattern was, what to do with the body and all of that. So if you are painting something, I do encourage you to find reference images. It can help give you ideas of patterns to paint on things, as well as the color choices. You can also, if you're looking for kind of color palettes, find a photo you like and figure out the colors in there. So now I've been looking at the mini and something didn't seem quite right, so I pulled up those photos again and realized the tips of his ears need to be white. And oh my gosh, it suddenly looks so much more like a badger, and he's so adorable. And once I let this white dry, I just went back in with some black and painted in the little nose on the badger. Just a little tiny dot. Badger! Alright, so now I'm going in with a very fine brush and Screamer Pink to paint in the eyebrows. It's amazing what eyebrows do to a mini. Always paint on eyebrows. It makes your mini suddenly go from weird to, oh yeah, that's a person. And again, feel free to move your miniature around. I like having something I can hold on to, like a cork or something like that. And don't be afraid to flip your miniature upside down if that's the way you need to hold it to get your paintbrush in. Alright, so now that I've painted everything up, we're just going to quickly fill in this base with Basilicanum Grey. I like the cobblestone effect of the base, and you know, I'm never put too much time into basing. That's something I would like to work on a little bit more, but I really want the paint on the miniature to kind of be the impressive part here. So this is a quick way to paint it in, and there you have it. There's our half demon, artificer, mage, druid, whatever it is. I hope you enjoyed this video and definitely have come up with a character idea inspired by this mini, and who knows, maybe you'll see that character sometime soon, or I'll talk about it in an upcoming video. Thank you again to Hero Forge for sponsoring this video. If you want to make your own fully customizable tabletop miniature, head over to heroforge.com, and with their dozens of fantasy races and thousands of parts to choose from, you can build your perfect miniature. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe because we make videos here every week. Alright, I'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye! Badger, 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 badger.